Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. International football is facing fresh political pressure after 44 members of the European Parliament urged the governing body to reverse its decision to allow Russia to compete at this year's inaugural Under-15 World Cup in Azerbaijan. The controversy comes as Gianni Infantino also faces continued scrutiny over FIFA's governance, political neutrality and ethics complaints, raising broader questions about where football ends and geopolitics begins. Joining us now to discuss it further is Jon Carter, sports correspondent at TVP World. Good to have you in the studio.
Thanks for having me, Sasha.
So, I mean, many people won't know what this U Under-15 Cup is. So explain it to a bit why, and is this a back door, if you will, to Russia returning to international football?
Yeah, well, it's going to be the first ever Under-15s World Cup, so it's a kind of new initiative. Previously, it went down as far as, I think, the Under-17s, and so I think the idea is to kind of expand things. FIFA is constantly looking at new ways of, money-making schemes and broadening the brand, etc. So, this event will be taking place in Azerbaijan in September, and the idea is just basically to have the same kind of model as they do with the World Cup, but also they're kind of calling it a festival. So I think they're trying to make it something a little bit more appealing for the teens, and also they'll make it a kind of chance for clubs to do some scouting and perhaps find some stars of the future. Pertaining to the significance of it, I don't think it's a broadly significant competition as such, but I think, in my opinion, we could perceive this as a bit of a stepping stone for potentially bringing Russia back into the fold. I don't think it's significant in and of itself, but they can't just bring Russia straight back in competing to a major tournament just overnight. So they have to do it kind of incrementally, and this would be like the fewest eyes and the smallest, the lowest level of competition. And of course it offers this kind of, let's say, excuse perhaps to say, well, look, let's not accuse the kids of doing any wrong here. They're not involved in the politics.
I was going to say, I mean, if it's under 15, I mean, these are young people, young athletes, and that's one of the arguments at FIFA's level, is that they should not be excluded as a sort of political decision here. But at the same time, the symbolism, the mere fact that this is connected, I mean, it's a tough call here, but I mean, what do you say to FIFA's decision there, or rather their opinion of this, or can you really, let's say, separate those two ultimately?
Well, yeah, I mean, first thing to say is if you just isolate what they're saying and, well, come on, let's not lay it on the kids here, kids under the age of 15 in Russia. Well, if you take that on its own, yeah, who can really argue with that? They're not doing something wrong or contributing to, the war in Ukraine. But, of course, we can't just take things in isolation, and there are broader factors in play. And like we've seen of many aspects of the way in which Russia functions, things are used as a tool. And like I was saying earlier, my perception is very much that it is rather a stepping stone towards later inclusion in a major tournament. And like I said, you can't just jump straight back into the World Cup or European Championships. You have to do things slowly, sort of creep back in. And so with that in mind, I think this is the benefit for Russia in that sense. And if we are to perceive this from the side of, you mentioned at the top of the show, the MEPs signing these letters and what their argument is, well, they're saying, think about all the Ukrainian kids that have been taken to Russia. And so if you're going to use the argument of, won't somebody think of the children? Well, let's weigh this up here. Is it more important for Russian kids to have the chance to play football a Youth World Cup, or is it more important that we prioritise kids who've been kidnapped, reportedly, to Russia.
But also, I mean, if we're looking at the venue, you mentioned this already, this is going to be happening in September in Azerbaijan, part of the European League and Federation. Would this be able to go ahead, I wonder, and a question to you now, if this would take place, the under-15s would take place, maybe Poland, Germany, France, any of these other countries?
Yeah, I mean, short answer, no, I would say. I just don't think it would be viable. And I think they have specifically chosen the opportunity. I mean, FIFA have specifically chosen this opportunity as a chance to bring Russia back into the fold because Azerbaijan politically, although they've definitely clearly offered support to Ukraine, humanitarian aid, etc., they're trying to sort of tread carefully, and they're not as sort of invested perhaps as a lot more kind of Western European countries and Poland and etc. So no, I don't think Russia would be participating had this tournament being played in Central or Western Europe.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you alluded to this earlier. I mean, we have 44 members of the European Parliament, well over 44 out of, I believe, over 500 MEPs. So is this significant in the sense that, you know, it's not a massive number, but nevertheless, it is something to take note. Does this add credence to maybe FIFA and Gentino here saying, well, actually, we're going to change our minds here, or do you think this is just going to erode off of his radar?
No, I mean, think about the amount of criticism and backlash that Infantino faces almost on a daily basis with the things that he says, the acquaintances he keeps, etc. I think it's water off a duck's back for him. He'll plough through with whatever it is that he feels is best for him and best for FIFA. And fundamentally, what is best for FIFA is maintaining their brand and keeping it strong. And the idea for them is to include as many nations as possible within tournaments, not to exclude those. And because one of their biggest fears is that there could potentially be like a breakaway in organisation. And, you know, if Russia, for example, is permanently excluded, let's say on a political level, certain countries are going to start siding with Russia more, well, then maybe they start setting up their own footballing institution, and then FIFA would, their grip would weaken with the power structure within football.
And if we're looking back as well, was it 8 years ago, the last World Cup actually in Russia? We have a current World Cup right now. Do you see this? I mean, you said there's controversy on one end. We're not sure if this will alter the decision by FIFA and Gentino. But let's say this goes ahead. Does this in any way then pave the way for Russia to be included again? Not just in FIFA, but maybe other sporting events. I mean, we've had a ban from the Olympics, for instance. I mean, Russian athletes are able to participate to some degree, but Russia has not. Is this a kind of bringing them back in? Is this one of those measures, you reckon? Or?
I think it is. Absolutely it is. You know, let's look at the sort of more broader overview and thinking about what other sporting institutions have done recently. So let's think about the Olympics. So we know now that Belarus are effectively going to be able to participate under their flag, under their anthem. So they're kind of effectively back in the fold. The World Aquatics organisation, you know, sort of swimming, water polo, etc., and judo have decided that Russia will be able to take part in qualifying for the Olympics. Now, I don't know if the Olympics, which will be in 2 years' time, whether that comes sort of too soon for Russia to participate or not. For Belarus, I think they're going to be there. That's almost, well, not assured, but it's quite likely. Russia, I think kind of 50-50 as to whether or not they'll be participating under, you know, with their colours, etc. it's a bit undecided as yet. The footballing situation is slightly different because a lot of the power lies in Europe, and of course most European nations are generally opposed to accepting Russia back into the fold, and that's particularly the case with UEFA, the European governing body of football. And they made it quite clear that they largely oppose inclusion for Russia.
Yeah. So the beautiful game, as they call it, but also a complicated game. Look, thanks so much, Jon Carter, there from TVP World sports correspondent for us. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.